Why is it that the souls who carry the most sacred potential for spiritual awakening are often born into the most fractured, turbulent families? Why is it you, the one who feels too deeply, sees too clearly, loves too sincerely, find yourself cast as the black sheep, the emotional scapegoat, the invisible one exiled in your own bloodline, the one who speaks truth, yet is met with silence, who brings light, yet is blamed for the darkness? Let us now touch on what so many fear to name. Your suffering is not a curse, it is a calling. It is not the universe's rejection of you, but its initiation. Carl Jung, one of the great architects of modern psychology and soul thought, believed that each human life carries within it the seed of individuation, the sacred path of becoming whole, of returning to the self. But what is rarely spoken aloud is this. For those souls chosen to elevate the vibration of the collective, that journey does not begin in peace. It begins with psychological fire. It begins in the house where love was conditional, where truth was shamed, where safety was withheld. That is no accident. It is the beginning of your alchemical task. For the chosen ones, those born to awaken, not only themselves but others, transformation is not sparked by praise. It is forged in the furnace of dysfunction. The very family that seemed to break you open was the crucible that prepared you. You were never meant to be like them. You were meant to transmute what they could not. And so, your life began not in a sanctuary, but on a battlefield. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But becoming is no gentle ascent. It is a descent into the roots of your pain, a confrontation with everything you were denied. When your early world was soaked in rejection, guilt, control, or emotional starvation, you were never punished. You were being redirected, trained to seek a love deeper than the conditional kind. Not the love that comes from your family, but the love that comes from Source itself. Whether you call it God, the universe, or your highest self, it is from this deeper well that you begin again. Toxic families are not accidents of fate. They are the soul's first trial, the crucible through which your deeper essence is awakened. They are not the source of your light, but the shadows that force it into shape. These familial battlegrounds act as the boot camp for the spirit. The relentless demand to prove your worth, the emotional chaos that keeps you guessing, the constant erasure of your truth. These are not just wounds, they are catalysts. They push you inward, into the only refuge that cannot be stripped from you, your sacred connection to the divine. This is why the black sheep is not just different. They are spiritually encoded to carry a higher frequency. You do not merely see with different eyes, you feel with a different heart. You sense what others fear, hold space for what others deny, and walk through pain that others will spend their whole lives avoiding. While those around you may find comfort in illusion, you were pulled out of the dream early. You were forced to understand love through absence, to cultivate compassion through contrast, and to master empathy not as a choice, but as a survival instinct, carved from cruelty. This is not just a poetic sentiment. It is a truth embedded in the deepest psychological laws of the soul. Jung taught that the shadow, the buried, unloved, unconscious part of our being, must be confronted if we are to become whole. You were not born into darkness, to remain lost in it. You were born there to become intimate with it, to walk through its corridors and to emerge with the kind of wisdom only survivors carry. When you grow up in a home where your voice is silenced, your intuition dismissed, your thoughts manipulated, and your needs ignored, you are not being destroyed. You are being initiated. Every moment of gaslighting, every act of control, every instance of emotional starvation secretly forges your spiritual immunity. You stop begging for validation. You begin to recognize the thunder of your own voice beneath the noise. You learn to stay rooted in truth even as others try to shrink you. And here lies the paradox that only the soul understands. You needed that very environment not because you deserved suffering, but because you were called to strength. Your soul did not come here seeking ease. It came for depth. It came for mastery. And the only way out was through. To become who you were divinely encoded to be in this lifetime, to embody the gifts buried within your soul, and bring them into the world. You first had to learn the hardest lessons in the most unforgiving places. You had to discover how to speak your truth when silence was demanded, how to protect your inner calm in the eye of emotional chaos. How can you walk upright in your truth even when love becomes conditional and your eyes turn cold? The spotlight will always feel threatening until you have learned to endure the shadows without losing your light. And those shadows, more often than not, do not begin in the outside world. They begin in the home. Let us not sugarcoat it. For some, the word family does not evoke warmth, but a tightness in the chest. Some families do not feel like safe havens, but like soul-sized cages. If you grew up being told you were too much, too sensitive, too loud, too emotional, or punished not for your wrongdoings, but for your honesty, then you are not broken, you are not cursed. You are chosen, and being chosen has never meant being exempt from pain. It means being appointed to transform it. And here is the truth that too many spiritual paths skip over. The path of the chosen one does not begin in radiance. It begins in darkness. It begins with betrayal by the ones you were biologically programmed to trust. It begins with rejection where there should have been belonging. The faces of your earliest shadows often look like mother, father, or sibling. The ones meant to protect you often carry their own inherited wounds, passing them down, not out of malice but unconsciousness. Carl Jung understood this with piercing clarity. He once wrote that the family is the cradle of all neuroses, not as an indictment, but as an observation of how the psychic landscape is first shaped. Jung saw the family not only as a source of belonging, but also as the original blueprint for the soul's formation. When a family has unresolved trauma buried beneath generations of silence and shame, it births what Jung called complexes. Deep emotional wounds stored in the unconscious that begin to control behavior like invisible puppeteers. And you, chosen one, were not born into such a family by chance. You were born into it as initiation. You were placed in the eye of a karmic storm, into a lineage where emotional suppression, shame, and control formed the unspoken laws. This is not a cosmic punishment, but a sacred appointment. You incarnated into the heart of dysfunction, not to repeat its cycles, but to rupture them, to awaken within it, to become the first voice of truth in a long history of silence. When love is transactional, you are taught to earn what should be freely given. When your feelings are dismissed, you begin to question your reality. When your existence itself feels like a burden to those around you, you are forced to ask a question most children should never have to ask. Is it safe to be me? And when the answer is no, the soul begins to search for safety beyond the human. It begins to awaken, not because you are fragile, but because your soul came into this lifetime with a mission, a calling, a vow, to remember your worth in the absence of applause, to build an unshakable core in the absence of approval, to find truth in the echoing silence of emotional abandonment. You were not here to conform to the mold that broke others. You were here to melt it down and remake it into something conscious, something sacred. Jung believed that wholeness does not come from bypassing the shadow, but from turning toward it. He taught that the path to individuation, the becoming of one's truest self, requires a confrontation with the shadow, the disowned aspects of self and society. And what deeper shadow is there than a family that teaches you to deny your soul just to be loved? So if your childhood taught you more about survival than safety, more about self-censorship than self-expression, then understand this: you were not born into the wrong family. You were born into the fire so that you could become the flame, not to burn others, but to illuminate what has long been hidden. And that light, your light, is not inherited. It is earned through the journey of remembering who you were before the world taught you to forget. You were not mistakenly born into a family ruled by dysfunction. You were assigned there by a deeper wisdom, one that knew your soul's light could only be forged in the presence of the shadow. For in every toxic family system, the archetype of the scapegoat emerges, the one who questions what others blindly accept, the one labeled as too intense, too emotional, too much. the one who does not conform. But within that label lies something sacred. Often, the most spiritually awakened one in the room is the one who disturbs the silence. You were not born to maintain the sickness. You were born to interrupt it. And interruption is not always loud. It is not always a scream in the middle of a storm. Sometimes it is the quiet decision not to abandon yourself when your belongings depend on it. Sometimes it is weeping in the solitude of your own room after being emotionally dismissed, and still choosing to believe in the truth you feel in your bones. Sometimes it is the invisible act of carrying ancestral wounds that were never yours to bear, simply because your soul has the strength to end what others could not name. Being the black sheep is not a punishment. It is a sacred role. It is the role of the one who must stand outside the illusion in order to finally see it. Because only those who no longer fit into the dysfunction can begin to transform it. And that clarity, that outsider's vision, comes with pain, but also with power. You become the mirror, the alarm clock, the living contradiction to everything the system demands. Toxic families don't merely fail to meet your emotional needs, they condition you to ignore them yourself. They don't just wound you, they train you to stay wounded. You are placed into roles like costumes, the caretaker who overfunctions, the achiever who earns love through success, the invisible one who learns to survive by disappearing. You are rewarded for suppressing your truth and punished the moment you attempt to speak it. But beneath this performance, something ancient is stirring. The psyche is not passive. The soul remembers. Each time your love is met with withdrawal because it came with honesty, a seed of truth takes root. Each time control is cloaked in concern, your inner fire begins to burn for freedom. Each time affection is withheld, unless you bend yourself out of shape, you begin to reclaim your right to take up space, whole and unfiltered. This process is not a glorification of suffering, but a sacred recognition of its role in awakening. Jung believed that the shadow, the repressed, unacknowledged parts of the psyche, must be confronted and integrated if we are ever to become whole. What your family rejected in you, belittled in you, feared in you, were often the very aspects that held your deepest strength. The qualities that could not be controlled were the ones that would one day liberate you. Alchemy is not a metaphor here. It is what happens inside the soul of someone who transforms abandonment into inner trust, control into sovereignty, shame into sacred individuality. These wounds do not come to destroy you. They come to strip away illusions. They come to sever the ties between your worth and their approval. They come to dissolve your need to earn love so that you can remember you are love. And that remembering, raw, quiet, radiant, is the moment your awakening begins. It is not born from peace, but from fracture, not from comfort, but from resistance. You are born into the fire, not to be consumed by it, but to rise from it as something purified, something sovereign, something real. You are not broken, you are being rebuilt from the inside out. And the life you are here to live begins the moment you stop seeking permission and start embodying your truth. The truth is this: your family was never merely a place of origin. It was your first spiritual battleground, the crucible in which your soul was set ablaze and forced to remember itself through contrast, through resistance, through the ache of misrecognition. Just as warriors are never trained on peaceful meadows, neither were you. You incarnated not into ease, but into intensity. You didn't choose comfort. You chose the storm with its distortion, its mirrors, its confusion, so that one day you could emerge as clarity. This was no punishment. It was your sacred initiation. Only by facing what you are not can you awaken to what you truly are. You are not in control. You are love. You are not gaslight. You are truth. You are not guilty. You are connected. And while many unconsciously inherit the family script and act it out like a play written by wounded ancestors, you are the one who said, "This ends with me." That is the burden and the beauty of being the chosen one. But here lies the paradox. As your light begins to pierce through the illusion, as your healing gains momentum, the people most threatened by it are not strangers. They are often those still bound to the script you are rewriting. The moment you begin to rise, don't expect applause from those still asleep. Instead, you may be met with resistance, criticism, or even gaslighting, because your awakening shakes the very foundation of their unconscious world. Your clarity threatens the illusion they need to stay intact. This is why spiritual grounding is no longer optional. It is essential. You are not here to convert or convince. You are here to embody your truth, to remain tethered to your inner source. And that tether can be visualized in a sacred way. Imagine a luminous cord extending from your belly to the heavens, a spiritual umbilical cord connecting you directly to source, to the field of unconditional love, wisdom, and power. This cord is not metaphorical, it is real to your nervous system, which responds not only to external stimuli, but to the symbols you hold in your mind. When you feel drained, rejected, or unseen, return to this image. See the light cascading down into your body, strengthening your bones, calming your heart, sharpening your mind. Let it nourish you in all the ways your environment cannot. You are never disconnected. You only forgot to reconnect. The second tool in your sacred arsenal is this: stop taking their projections personally. One of the great spiritual deceptions is the belief that others' opinions reflect truth. But in toxic dynamics, their criticisms are rarely about you. They are projections of their unhealed shadow. Carl Jung taught that what is unconscious in ourselves is projected onto others. So when they call you selfish, dramatic, or too much, they are naming the parts of themselves they refuse to meet. Practice sovereignty in that moment. Say to yourself, "That's not mine." You are not responsible for their discomfort with your growth. You are not the container for their suppressed rage or guilt. And once you stop absorbing their shadow, it loses power over you. It bounces off. You become immune. And here is the third most radical tool: boundaries. You do not owe constant access to those who drain your spirit. Distance is not cruelty, it is clarity. Boundaries are not betrayal, they are self-respect. You can love someone and still protect your peace. You can care for them and still say no. You can mourn the family you longed for while creating the soul family you were always meant to find. If you can leave the toxic environment, do so. Not with bitterness, but with quiet liberation. But if you cannot yet escape physically, create spiritual pockets of safety. Find resonance wherever you can. A single soul online, a mentor, a book, a presence that reminds you of who you are beneath the roles you were trained to play. You are not meant to heal alone. The more you surround yourself with those who mirror your light, the faster your frequency stabilizes. This is the real work. This is what it means to be chosen, not to be praised or adored, but to be initiated, shattered, and reassembled in the image of something truer, deeper, and freer than this world dares to imagine. And from that place, you rise. Not to escape the family you came from, but to transform the future you are now creating. You were not cast into the fire of a toxic family by fate's cruelty. You were initiated there, because your soul carried within it the ancient memory and capacity to alchemize suffering into wisdom, rupture into rebirth. And now, whether you realize it or not, you are fulfilling that sacred task. These spiritual tools are not sentimental fluff. They are your soul's armor, forged in fire. They tether you to a higher reality, a dimension where your value is not conditional, your voice is not stifled, and love is not used as a weapon. When the world around you feels heavy, dim, or dissonant, come back. Return inward. Reconnect to the eternal thread, the luminous cord that binds you to source. You were never broken. You were being temperamental. Every ache was a sculptor's chisel, carving the strength you now carry. The path of awakening does not always appear as light. More often, it appears as a collapse, and in that collapse, the ego dissolves. You may feel abandoned by the world, unheard even by God. You may ache for belonging, ache for rest. This is not evidence that you've failed. It is the soul's exhale before resurrection. Chosen ones walk this narrow edge between despair and revelation, not because they are weak, but because their soul is expanding wide enough to carry the future. If you have ever numbed the ache with distraction, addiction, or silence, do not shame yourself. Your body was doing what it needed to survive. But you are here now, and now you are ready to live. You cannot turn back. Not because the world expects anything from you, but because your very presence is part of a collective awakening. Your pain was not without purpose. It shaped your character, refined your perception, readied you to become the blueprint for a world that is shedding its illusions. Carl Jung once said, "Only the paradox comes anywhere near to comprehending the fullness of life." You are that paradox, wounded and wise, broken and blooming, and your emergence is not accidental. The earth is trembling with old structures collapsing, and it is the chosen ones who are rising from those ashes. You are the one who carries the endurance to feel everything and still love. You, who see through the veils and still choose to believe. You, who were shattered by cruelty, still offer compassion. But to guide others through their night, you must first survive your own. And when you do, when you stop begging for love from the ones who never learned how to give, you'll find your soul's gifts awakening like dormant seeds under rain. Truth will no longer require explanation. You will know it. Sensitivity will become your radar. Intuition is your North Star. Empathy is your healing balm. Creativity will pour like spring from your fingertips. And the waiting for permission, for recognition, will end. You will become the permission. You will embody the recognition. This is your sacred re-entry. But beware, survival mode can become seductive. Pain, when lived in too long, begins to masquerade as safety. Depression will whisper, "Stay hidden." Numbing behaviors will echo, "You don't need to feel this." But you are not here to hide. You are here to remember, to feel and rise anyway. Every moment you resist the urge to disappear, every time you choose presence over avoidance, you reclaim a forgotten fragment of your soul. There are people, souls, waiting for your story. But first, you must live it in full. Your family may never apologize. The closure you crave may never come. And still, your liberation does not require their understanding. Your peace is not chained to their approval. Your light is not dimmed by their blindness. You are the living proof that out of darkness, galaxies are born. And someone somewhere will breathe easier tomorrow because you chose to keep going today. So if you've made it this far, know this: you are not a casualty of your story. You are the author of a new myth. You are the dawn in a long lineage of night. And chosen ones, don't underestimate the divine courage it takes to still love, trust, create, and shine after what you've survived. That is divinity embodied. And when the night returns, as it sometimes will, come back to your source. Plug into that golden cord of eternal belonging. Let it fill your chest. Let it lift your gaze. You are not lost. You are awakening. And the world has been aching for the exact frequency only you can bring. Thank you for surviving, for showing up, for becoming. You are not alone. You are not late. You are the light that the storm could not put out. If something within this message stirred you, if even a single word mirrored your inner experience, I invite you to let your voice be heard in the comments. Have you encountered that soul whose presence feels like home, or are you still walking the sacred path back to yourself? Your story, however unfinished, may become the lantern in